Argos and Stampeders voted in favor of playing four-down football during the league meetings in Toronto at the end of March. The fact four downs even went to a vote, fellas, is a story in itself. What are the takeaways for the future of three-down football in the CFL?
I mean, I think it's good that the CFL is continuing to evaluate and investigate the best ways in which they can engage fans. But to me, this should have been a non-issue from what we discussed on last week's show when the market research was already done. Randy Ambrosi has talked about the market research that the CFL did in January, and presuming that that market research was the same as the independent poll done by Angus Reid in December, literally just weeks earlier, people don't want this. And anybody who scrolled through CFL Twitter in the last year can tell you this as well, that fans do not want four downs. So I think that the CFL should embrace new ways to make the three-down game more exciting. And I absolutely think that there are ways in which the game can be improved because, yeah, the product on the field in 2021 was not as good as it has been in the past. So I am surprised and, to be honest, disappointed that we have teams in this league voting for four downs because we know it's not what people want. It might be what these teams want. I guess that's why you cast the vote. But if you don't believe that your fans will like the change, I have no idea why somebody would back this move other than their own, I suppose, personal and maybe selfish opinion.
As much as I harp on Randy Ambrosi and as much as he deserves it a lot of the time, sometimes we can have a little bit of misdirected anger towards the commissioner when he's really just a puppet for the guys behind the scenes making a lot of these decisions. I think this vote shows that. But what I took issue with this week is that this story won't die, and it's because Ambrosi keeps adding new fuel to the fire. He went on the record saying four downs was off the table. It was done. He promised to go three downs. All he had to do was every time he was asked, say that exact same line. No changes, rehearsing in the mirror. I don't care. Instead, he starts to critique our colleague at Sportsnet, Arash Madani. And whatever you think of Arash Madani, he has the receipts. Every time he brings out this stuff about the league meetings, we know it's accurate. And all of a sudden, there's a whole new life to this story that should have been over a week ago.
It is 100% truthful, guys. We know it. We heard it around the CFL Combine and afterwards. For certain, the Argos and Stamps, for anyone out there that doesn't want to believe Arash Madani, who, oh, by the way, has won the best reporter in Canada in the sports category award before, if you don't want to believe that, dude, well, we're giving it to you right now. The Argos and Stampeders voted for four downs. That is factual. And JC, I agree 100% with what you said. Ambrosi could have came out months ago in the weeks leading up to the league meetings and said, hey, we're not going to play four-down football. But the truth is, it was discussed behind the scenes for a decent amount of time leading up to those league meetings in Toronto. And that's why I said off the top, the fact that it even got to a vote is a massive story in itself because, fellas, in the long history of the league, that alone has never happened. There's never been a vote on whether or not the league should play three-down football or four-down football. And oh, by the way, two teams voted for it. So do we actually really believe the commissioner when he says that they're committed to three-down football? I think they might be going towards that commitment with four downs, even though I had a little slip there. So to me, I really get the sense overall that as we go along here, there could be more traction to this. They certainly want to cool down that hot seat and all the fervor that's been directed at Ambrosi, rightly or wrongly. Sometimes he is the messenger, but behind the scenes, he had presented to the general managers and head coaches and presidents the possibility of going to four down. So this is something that is not going to go away until there is a definitive, in my mind, statement that we will never go to four downs. And if we can actually believe the person saying that, whether that's Ambrosi or somebody else in the commissioner's chair.
I'm not sure the CFL should come out and say that because never say never. And I'm not an advocate for four downs. Anybody who's listened to this podcast for any length of time would know that. But I do think that it's a bit of a fool's errand to be speaking, theoretically in perpetuity, right? If 50 years from now, when none of us are covering the CFL. Well, maybe JC still will be. He's only 24, but you get what I'm saying, right? 50 years from now, I don't think that anybody involved in the league or covering the league can speak on behalf of the league or what will or won't be happening, right? Nobody knows what the future holds. But I do think that Ambrosi should come out and say, for the foreseeable future, like put somewhat of a limit on it, but for the foreseeable future, because again, I don't know anybody who wants this, and the independent polling has said that nobody wants this. The only people who want this apparently work for the Toronto Argonauts and Calgary Stampeders. And to me, I don't see a pathway for the CFL to make any type of inroads with four downs. And I did think it was suspicious, guys, when we were on the 9 CFL head coach GM conference calls that took place on Zoom leading up to the combine. Routinely, right? Guys were asked, how do you feel about four downs, either personally or how does your organization? And it was very non-committal. I think by the time we worked our way from east to west, people weren't even asking the question anymore because nobody was answering it. It was no comment, or it was very, just a tepid, oh, well, right now we're working on, the most exciting 3-down game we can. Similar line to what Ambrosi has been giving recently in his media availabilities or when speaking to independent media companies. So I thought that was interesting. The fact that nobody was weighing in on it. Nobody was seeming to offer a strong opinion, though, of course, we know this was seriously being talked about behind the scenes.
That's the key, Hodge, right there, is the fact that there was some carefully constructed public relations going on. Because through each one of those availabilities, and you sort of alluded to this, the message was essentially, we want to focus on making 3-down football the most fast and entertaining brand of football we can. And that was literally what every single person said as they were asked on the list. And you said it as well. That's what Ambrosi said. So behind the scenes, I'm sure there was a talk about, all right, everybody's going to get asked about this. This is what you're going to say, because it doesn't make them commit one way or another. Let's give an example, okay? Mike O'Shea, born and raised Canadian, arguably the best Canadian defender in the history of the CFL. You don't think that he wants the game to stay 3 downs, but yet he has to have the best interest of the league in his mind right now because of his position. So he is a very passionate guy. For people that don't know, for him to bite his tongue on this issue, in my mind, would have hurt a lot. And that's just one example. You go across and look at the guys that are in power in this league, or in those positions of leadership on the football operations side, I should say. And the majority behind the scenes, I think, would tell you that they want to stay with 3-down football because that's the core. That's what makes the CFL unique. But they were told, in my mind, and this is just speculation, but I think it's proven out, what to say.
It's very clear that the commissioner and the board of governors, they had everyone circling the wagons, just making sure everyone was on the same page and that they didn't take any more flack for this. But to your earlier point, Dunk, about the possibility that this can snowball and come back again, maybe not next year, but a couple years down the line, I think what was really concerning to me is the 2 teams that ultimately voted for it. Toronto, I think everyone expected, but Calgary, now that was a bit of a curveball, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people around the league wouldn't have expected someone like John Hufnagel, who we see as a longtime, a CFL Hall of Famer, one of those legends who should be protecting the game, to be someone who might side with the 4-down issue. But in this case, we see a guy who has loved the CFL, has been around the league, changing his mind, suggesting this type of fundamental change. And there could be more guys like him in the future.
And it should be noted that Hufnagel, rightfully so, is respected around the league, and more importantly, at the board of governors level, and certainly he is very respected by Ambrosi. So if he's voting for something, and the fact that he even got to a vote, as I said, is a story, then this certainly has traction down the line. As much as the CFL wants to turn the story and put the focus on the 2022 season and playing 3-down football, this is not going away behind the scenes. That's why we're here, because the fans need to know that.
Yeah, and for the record, we do not own the URL 4Down Nation. So if and when a change does take place, you can find us at, I don't know, Justin Dunk CrossFitWorkout.com. We'll have to wait and see.
It's a legacy brand, man. 3Down Nation will always be there because it's so close to fans and their hearts, right? That's what they know Canadian football to be. I will say, we should sort of present the other side. There was a WhatsApp discussion going on between me and my buddies actually today. They were kind of joking around with me about what's going on in terms of 3 downs or 4 downs. But a few of them actually said that if they went to 4-down football, they would check out a CFL game. Where literally, and I said this in the group, I'm not going to bore anybody with the CFL talk because I know they all love NFL. So that would at least get that group interested. And I think that's the other side we need to present here, fellas. That's what the CFL is looking at, is how can they go about this potential change, we should say, in a careful way to attract that group or that generation that they perhaps lost. And if it even gets them to tune into a couple games, that's what you're looking for, because then hopefully you can grab them. But also it's a tricky situation, because how do you do it without alienating your fans? Like, I've heard it said around the league that if you're a fan, a diehard fan of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, are you really not going to cheer for them if the field changes or if they change the number of downs? Well, we might find out in the future. But I think that's the other side to present here, is that at least it piqued the interest of a couple mid-30-year-old buddies of mine who all played 3-down football with me at the University of Guelph.
I think sometimes that can be a little bit of a false equivalency, though. They say that they're going to be interested when it's 4 downs, but will they really? I mean, I don't see people lining up to watch the USFL or the XFL in Canada, and that's 4 downs. I don't see them lining up out here to go to, SFU games over UBC games because it's 4-down American college football. I mean, people go to what they think is the best. And right now we have a dynamic that's happened where the NFL has gained so much traction with the rise of the internet age and globalization that it is a monopoly, right? Everyone knows the NFL brand and they think it's the best, and anything beneath it, right, is not good enough to pay attention to. So they might say that they'll check it out if it's 4 downs, but will they really? I doubt it, because they don't check out other levels that are already 4 downs beneath the NFL right now.
Yeah, and Dunk, how many of those buddies were at the Bills games when they played in Toronto?
There was a handful, but it's definitely valid. We're just trying to present all the scenarios. I think the points you guys make are certainly valid.
And that's fair. I'm sure there would be, and the numbers do bear this out. If you look at the polling, there are a subset of younger people, and it certainly is shifting in terms of the demographics. Younger people are flocking to the NFL in droves. And I think if you're the CFL, you look at that and you say, okay, first things first, we need to stop competing directly with the NFL as much as we can and move up our season, which has been talked about. That's been talked about for a long time. And secondly, I think you need to ensure that you are a premium betting option, because we know that young people love to bet on football, and the CFL is moving towards that, obviously, with the legalization of single game betting in this country, first of all, occurring, and second of all, rapidly growing. So I think that those are the things you key in on. And hey, if the thing people don't like about 3-down football is punting, then just get rid of punts. You have to go for it on 3rd down. At that point, it is 4-down football. But the 3rd down actually matters. But my point is, I don't know. I don't put a lot of stock into people who say, hey, I don't care about you now, but I would care about you if you change this about yourself. I don't know. You're in or you're out. And I'll say this too. When the Raiders and Packers played a preseason game in Winnipeg, nobody cared. Nobody.
I don't know about nobody.
Okay, let's compare the game day of a Blue Bombers game.
And it's a preseason game too.
Yeah, and they shortened it to 80 yards because Matt LaFleur complained about the field, but that's a separate issue.